to the Muslim man who basically shouted at some of the media and the police to find out what was going on. I just asked him what the problem was. He said, look, as he came up, his car was basically one of these car parks on Phillip Street here. He wanted to retrieve it, and the media started taking his photograph, and that aggravated him, and he blew up back at them. So, look, it's a nothing situation, but it goes to show something. The tension here is pretty high, and I spoke to a couple of other people with him. So they're both Muslims who were saying that their fear now is that Muslim retaliation, and they say that an incident like this happens, and it's the Muslim population in this city that instantly feels it with the backlash from the communities surrounding. So, look, it is just a terrible situation we find ourselves in. Obviously, first and foremost for the hostages today, but the implications for the community as well.
All right, thanks Chris Reason so much for your time. You're watching Seven's live continuous coverage of the cafe siege in Sydney. Here's what we know so far. At 9:44 this morning, a report was made to police about a man acting suspiciously with a blue bag at the Lindt chocolate shop in Mартин-Плейс in the heart of Sydney. Directly across the road from Channel 7's news studio. Channel 7 staff were watching from the newsroom window across Mартин-Плейс when Lindt staff were ordered against the cafe's windows with their hands in the air. They looked absolutely terrified when they saw the hostages hold a black flag with the Arabic writing held against one of the cafe windows. We now know that it translates into "There is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is the messenger of God." And we have learned those words are linked to a Syrian extremist group called Jabhat al-Nusra. And that group has links to the Islamic State and al-Qaeda, as we heard in the last 15 minutes or so. But we have no information that the people behind this incident are linked to that group. It's only what we've learned from the markings on the flag. Police arrived on the scene very quickly, evacuating people from the immediate area with their guns drawn. The Channel 7 studio and surrounding buildings were evacuated, which is why we are now broadcasting from mobile facilities and not from our news centre here in Melbourne. So if our coverage is a little ropey in places, please bear with us. This is an extraordinary circumstance we find ourselves in and a very fluid situation. And we're trying to update you on every new development as it happens. There are heavily armed tactical response police surrounding the Lindt building. Initial reports were that 13 people were held hostage. The boss of the Lindt store has since been quoted online saying that there are around 50 people being held against their will. Who is Jabhat al-Nusra? Well, we'll go to Greg Barton from Monash University now for that. Who is this group?
Well, Jabhat al-Nusra, or the al-Nusra Front as it translates, is a group that was started in Syria in response to the civil war situation. It was started actually by Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, the leader of what's now calls itself Islamic State. He tried to take control of this group that he'd got going back in 2012. Last year, 2013, he tried to regain control, unify them. He was rebuffed by Al-Qaeda core. Finally, in February this year, Ayman al-Zawahiri, the head of Al-Qaeda core, said, you know, you have to break off all links. Since then, we've seen signs of rapprochement between the two groups and degrees of tactical cooperation. Certainly, many people who first joined the al-Nusra Front have gone across to Islamic State, and that's why when we talk about what's happening today in Sydney, we don't know whether this is just followers of Jabhat al-Nusra, or whether they're followers of Islamic State, or both. It's a fluid and complicated situation, but it's the Al-Qaeda affiliate al-Nusra and its latest manifestation in the form of Islamic State that concerns us.
All right, we'll get into more of that in a moment, but first let's go to Dave Wright at the Transport Management Centre. We tried to cross to him before. We'll do so again. Can you hear me, Dave?
Yes, Nick, good afternoon.
Good to hear from you. Now, obviously, the shutting down of the centre of Sydney would have thrown the traffic systems into chaos. What's happened?
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, around the Mартин-Плейс precinct, there has been a quite significant shutdown around the actual Mартин-Плейs area, including Macquarie Street, parts of Hunter Street, parts of Elizabeth Street. So that direct area has been shut down. But also, there's been some closures as well to try and free up the CBD of traffic. Obviously, our message is to try and get as many people out of the CBD as we can and not encourage anyone to go in there. That's for a number of reasons. First and foremost, to ensure that our emergency services have the best access to those roads as they can. Now, what's happening with the Sydney Harbour Bridge for those who are coming from the northern side, so from North Sydney and they're going into the Sydney CBD, they will not be able to access the Carl Expressway or your